Welcome to Crosspoint. An interactive program featuring ministers and leaders of the Christian community addressing the issues that are challenging the church today. Here's your host, Mark Taylor.
America is now at a crisis point. It's being brainwashed, and with these issues, it throws everything into chaos. As the nation drifts farther and farther from the truth, what's going to happen? Folks, thanks for tuning in today to Crosspoint. I'm Mark Taylor. My guest today is Dr. Rob Pacienza. He's from Coral Ridge Ministry, and Dr. Pacienza, along with other commentators, took together this DVD series. There's actually two of them, and their projects are called Cultural Chaos and Brainwashed, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Here on Crosspoint, we've got with us Rob Pacienza, and he is going to be talking with us about a couple of different projects that Coral Ridge Ministries has put out. Folks, anytime something comes from Coral Ridge, you can expect them to be good stuff. And Rob, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks you so much for having me on.
You've got DVDs here that people can get, of course, in order. It's called Brainwash, and it's talking about the indoctrination of American youth. If you've got a real sense of what's going on, there's nothing that tells us that there's messages being sent to our youth today that are trying to change the way they look at America, at Christianity, and life in general. What do you think?
No doubt. I mean, it is a billion-dollar industry, whether it's through the mainstream media, social media, we can see it in the public education system, entertainers, all trying to indoctrinate our youth to corrupt them. Statistics, and I think this is on the low end, that the average teen now spends nearly 5 hours a day on social media. We know who's controlling TikTok and so many other social media platforms that are out there, and unfortunately most parents see this as just merely entertainment and don't realize that their children and their grandchildren are systematically being indoctrinated, not according to the things of God, but to the ideologies and philosophies of this world. And it is truly brainwashing them and creating a culture of chaos.
Well, I know in the series there you say that, this is the most indoctrinated generation we've ever had. But isn't it true that Christianity kind of cuts against that grain of what the world does? And that's where the problem comes when it comes to the church being involved? Absolutely.
And the problem is, though, that the church is becoming less and less of a cultural influence. When people see the church as merely something that you do on Sunday mornings, it's your private time of worship, and it's disconnected from the rest of life. And you see, well, I'm going to have my children here at church 1 hour a week, and then disconnect, and then I'm going to put them in front of a TV screen or an iPhone, or allow them to go social media, or let them go into the public education system. When parents aren't helping to disciple their children with a biblical worldview, and churches aren't coming alongside of parents to resource them, you can understand why we're losing the battle. But this is where Christianity comes in. Christianity has always been a cultural force and a cultural influence, not just on Sunday mornings, but a system of thought and a movement that transforms society and culture all throughout the week. It gave parents and grandparents a holistic worldview for all of life. But if you see the statistics, how fewer and fewer evangelical Christians even operate according to a biblical worldview, and that's the reason we're experiencing the problems we are in our society today.
Oh, yeah, you're right, and that watching what's going on with the biblical worldview just keeps dropping. The numbers just seem to keep dropping in that area and stuff. Well, would you say that the line of normal in society seems to be moved now? And also, when you look at these things, would you say maybe sometimes a crisis we're seeing with our youth could even be a mental health crisis?
Absolutely. And so much of the mental illness is caused because of the amount of content that is being consumed on social media. Suicide rates amongst teenagers is at an all-time high because they're living this fantasy world. They're not living in reality. They're not spending time around the dining room table and in the living room living out that Deuteronomy 6 way of life where families are coming together and they're being shaped with a biblical worldview, and their parents are giving their children a firm foundation. They're living in this fantasy world on social media, on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, And then all of a sudden, when they don't measure up, they're falling into all kinds of traps and dangers. And so mental illness is at an all-time high. Like I said, suicide rates among teenagers is at an all-time high. And we can see the direct correlation by the amount of content, corrupt content, that they're consuming from social media to mainstream media, and it's really doing a lot of damage to the next generation.
Well, and speaking of the next generation, do you really believe that the next generation really has understanding of the Bible? I mean, or really has no understanding of what the Bible says, the majority of them?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, 72% of youth raised in the church, these are not youth raised outside of the church, but 72% of youth raised inside the church are walking away from the faith sometime during their freshman year of college. Now, when you do the study of what the remnant that is staying connected to the faith and in staying connected to the church, the predominant factor of what keeps youth connected to the church, they grew up in churches and families that valued a biblical worldview, that their families and their churches were talking about the whole counsel of God and how it applied to all of life. How does it apply to marriage and career and sexuality and gender and the sanctity of human life and truth? That's the problem. When you have the amount of churches that are no longer preaching biblical truth and preaching the whole counsel of God, and the busyness of families and parents that are abdicating their roles of the chief disciplers of their homes, and they're outsourcing discipleship to their schools and to their churches and to their youth group, of course you're going to have the problems that we have today. The amount of youth walking away from the faith, the amount of youth that don't operate with a biblical worldview, the amount of youth that say, yes, I'm a Christian, but don't believe that the Bible's the inspired Word of God. They don't believe that the Bible tells them right versus wrong and doesn't tell them how they should live, or they don't have to adhere to everything the Bible has to say. Yes, I love Jesus, but I don't need to follow him in every area of my life. These are the things that we're seeing in the next generation, and we better wake up to what our role as the family unit is and what our role as the Church of Jesus Christ is.
Well, thinking of that 72% we lose, you look at it, you see a youth group with around 50 kids in it, but only 18% of those kids are going to actually stay with the church after they get out of school. That's kind of tough to think about, and really churches need to think more about that. Now, you mentioned, how they're indoctrinated. Would you say this, and I know you do in this DVD series, talk a lot about this gender brainwashing. That seems to be becoming more and more of a deal than ever before.
No doubt. I mean, we live in a society where the cultural elites, public education, elected officials, you see it all throughout social media with social media influencers, that gender is fluid, that gender is a social construct. I mean, we're seeing this for really the first time in history. Even you study secular cultures and secular ideologies, even in the ancient Near East, and even they believe that there were two genders, male and female. So we're really seeing an unprecedented time in human history, and unfortunately, even inside the church, the next generation is being brainwashed and indoctrinated that they can choose their gender, that there's more than two genders, that gender is not defined by God and not defined by absolute truth, but defined however you want it to be, however you feel in that any given day, and it's leading to incredible heartache, incredible corruption with the minds and the souls of the next generation. But it's everywhere. I mean, we saw it in the Paris Olympics this year, the debate of gender ideology. I mean, these are debates we never used to have before, but all of a sudden in the last 5 to 10 years, we're now seeing this new cultural norm, and the ideologies of our world are just all-consuming and just prevalent everywhere we turn. Now,
would you say that the public school system is maybe, the main avenue that they're putting this through? We've seen these federal mandates, and it always seems to connect to the schools concerning anything to do with sexuality, of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Is that a big place?
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing gender reveal closets that children, if they don't feel safe at home, they can come out of the closet in their schools. We're seeing parents, the parental rights being diminished and really being suppressed. The Secretary of the Department of Education has come out publicly and said teachers know more than parents. And how we're seeing that is particularly in this area of gender and sexuality, where teachers are encouraging these children to come out of the closet. They're challenging and encouraging these kids to redefine their gender, even against the will and the wishes of their parents. Embracing the idea of gender mutilation, and the list goes on and on. But we see it. I no longer call it public education. It's government mandated indoctrination. That's what it is. Yeah. Whether it's in the public education school system or the state-run institutions of higher education, that's what this is. And whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school, or college, we really are sending our children into Babylon. And Christian families better wake up, and they better be prepared for the world and the institutions, particularly the educational institutions that they're sending their children into. But we shouldn't be surprised. This started back in the early 20th century with the rise of secular humanism. When the secular humanists took over public education in America, that was the beginning of the end. When they said that we don't need to believe in an absolute God, we don't need to believe in absolute truth. When we eventually, a few decades later, removed Bible from the classroom, removed prayer from the classroom, that really was the beginning of the end. And then, of course, you eliminate the teaching of creation, eliminate the teaching of intelligent design. You only can embrace the theory of evolution, Darwinian evolution, that teaches generations of children that they're a cosmic accident. All that to say, we should not be surprised. This happened decades ago. Unfortunately, we're now seeing the crisis of epic proportions. But this happened decades ago here in North America. We're now seeing it, the fatal fruit.
Well, and I'm just reading the other day, we've got the presidential stuff going on, but the vice president running on the Democrat side that's coming out of Minnesota, if I noticed right, starting next year, he's put in a area there in public education that if you do not sign papers that you affirm this type of teaching of this gender stuff and all that, you cannot have a license to teach in the state of Minnesota. This is getting way out there and way out of line, and I'm glad you put together projects like this, Brainwash, that helps people understand just how much of the indoctrination of America's youth is being touched by this. And I, in there you also talk about how our teens spend about 5 hours a day average, on social media and stuff. And that's another thing. But here's one that you had pointed out in this video, that you talked about the LGBTQ numbers and how they've risen. But among females, that number has risen greatly, about 30%. Why is that?
Well, I think you see, through social media, I think the public education schools, the school system here in America, I think they understand that they get exactly who their target audience is, and I think the female population, particularly as you get younger and younger in America, the left and the seculars in our nation have been advancing and propagating a lie that America is not only a racist nation, but a nation that suppresses women. And the answer and the solution for the suppression of women is to embrace your true self, to embrace your new sexuality. And I think really this has led to, a whole generation of females that are gender confused, that are considering themselves trans or bi, and I think the numbers are going to continue to rise because the left has won, unfortunately, and they're gaining in with this message that the true way to freedom, the true way of liberation, is breaking out of the shackles of our parents and our grandparents and our ancestors' traditional values and traditional way of thinking about life, and now embracing this sexual revolution, this new sexual revolution, I think unless we do something about it and stand up, we're only going to continue to see an entire generation, particularly the female generation, totally swept up and indoctrinated by the ideologies of our day.
I noticed also in there that 2 out of 3 adults, you said, believe that there's no real truth and have no worldview of such things being that way. Now, that's our adult population. It's no wonder it's affecting our young people.
Absolutely. Once again, we have bought the lie that Christianity is a private truth, not a public truth. It's something that you do in the privacy of your home. It's something that you do on Sunday mornings. So the profession of faith that you make as a Christian is something that is to remain private, but it does not necessarily affect your work or your marriage or your parenting or your sexuality or your voting or your understanding of politics and government. And so God's truth is not a public truth, and we've been buying that lie from the secular left for decades in this nation. They have unfortunately convinced the church in North America that the public square should not be a religiously plural square or a public square that embraces or welcomes people of faith. Keep your faith to yourself, and that the nation will be freer and more prosperous and will flourish with secularism being the ideology of the day. And I think any thinking person can look over the last 50 years and come to the conclusion, I would hope, that we're certainly not in a state in our nation where we are flourishing, but we're floundering. The last 50 years of buying into secularism and a secular public square has led to widespread chaos and destruction, and I pray that the Church of Jesus Christ finally opens their eyes and says, no, we are a nation that is founded on biblical principles. We're founded with a Judeo-Christian worldview, and our public square never flourishes more than when it has people of faith that are standing up and standing out for righteousness, because righteousness, as the proverb says, is what ultimately exalts a nation.
We are talking today about Brainwash. It's a series put out by Coral Ridge Ministries, and we're talking with Rob Pacienza. We'll be back with more right after this.
Never miss your favorite show again. For more than 30 years, KNEO has been bringing you great Bible teachers on a local and national level. And now, we've made it easier than ever to hear from these great men and women of God. KNEO's entire lineup is now available to listen anytime, anywhere, through our website. Go to kneo.org/podcast to see all the options. You can search for programs alphabetically, or you can select individual categories like culture, kids, leadership, or music. We even have a category just for locally produced programs, so you can hear from pastors and spiritual leaders located right here in the 4-state area. And all these resources are absolutely free. KNEO's mission is to get God's Word in front of you, and this is one of the ways we do it. Give it a try today. Go to kneo.org and click on the podcast tab to get started.
This is Mark Taylor. If you miss a broadcast of Crosspoint, you can always go to our website at www.kneo.org and click on the programs page. There you can access the current Crosspoint program as well as the last 4 programs that have been aired. Never miss another Crosspoint program again. Go to www.kneo.org today. Welcome back to Crosspoint. I'm Mark Taylor. With me today is Rob Pacienza. He's with Coral Ridge Ministries. He's also the pastor down at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church there in Florida. and they put out a lot of stuff, folks, and a lot of good stuff. One of those areas today, right at the moment, we're talking about is a DVD entitled Brainwashed. I would suggest people get stuff like this and show it in their church to their people so that they understand what's going on. But Rob, if people want to know more about Brainwashed or anything else that Coleridge Ministries has put out, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, they can simply go to crm.tv. crm.tv, we have an online store where you can purchase DVDs. We now have the option to stream. So if you want to stream any of our content on our devices, you want to buy a book, you want to buy one of our documentaries, you want to find our television listings. We have a weekend television show, which is nationally televised. You can find TV listings as well. All of the resources can be found at crm.tv, and all of our resources are there to serve the church, to be equipped for this cultural moment.
And you now are back doing radio again, too. Is that correct?
We are. Truth to Transform Radio, which can be found on the Truth Network, and those radio listings are found on crm.tv as well. It's a 30-minute program featuring our sermons here at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church, which once again is helping people understand and navigate the chaos of our culture, but how to do so with a biblical worldview.
Yeah, man, folks, you can listen to that program here on KNEO as well, because we do have that radio broadcast. A couple of things here, Rob. It seems like America, and I know you talk about it in the DVD series there, America's being transformed right before our eyes, basically into another country, isn't it?
Absolutely. A country that will eventually be unrecognizable compared to the nation that was founded nearly 250 years ago. And a lot of it has to do with the erasing of our history, the rewriting of our history, people that have come into power and the cultural elites of America that have said that, that our nation was founded as a secular nation, or at worst a racist nation, and they have done an incredible job of pulling the wool over our eyes, indoctrinating the next generation to actually buy into this propaganda, and as I say, to buy into these lies that are tearing down the moral fabric of this nation.
And, that makes me think you have another series out there as well called Cultural Chaos, and some of these are in book form as well, folks. But this is, again, another resource you can get from Coleridge Ministries. And what you're talking about right now, when you talk into that area there as well as this cultural chaos, it's like God's being pushed out of the public forum for our daily living. I mean, that's what they're wanting to accomplish, aren't they?
Absolutely, it's a public square that is purely secular. People of faith are no longer welcome. We've been told that it's fine to be a Christian, but certainly just keep it to yourself. When on the other side, they have been promoting and propagating their lies and their doctrine of secularism and cultural Marxism for decades in this nation. As I often tell our congregation, everybody's religious. It just depends what religion are you promoting, what religion are you buying into. So make no mistake about it, whether it's cultural Marxism, whether it's secularism, everybody has a doctrine that they believe in. Everybody has a religion that they're advancing. We've just been told that Christianity can no longer be advanced, while the other philosophies and ideologies and religions of our day are more than welcome in the public square. Just Christians need to just remain silent.
Yeah, and folks, these folks at Coleridge Ministries do a great job in breaking these programs down into where they're in segments of you can understand. For instance, in Cultural Chaos, you've got that broken down. And by the way, it's about the lies behind America's breakdown. And, you go into those segments, there is no God, truth is relative, my body, my choice, gay and transgender, whatever goes on there, God doesn't belong in government. All these things, and it's just not, folks, it's not just Rob talking in these videos, but you have a host of people, experts, some, that are involved in this, that you go and listen to their counsel as well, and all this is put into these projects.
Yeah, we're really blessed to have great friends all around the world that wanted to contribute to this important work. Alex McFarland, the great apologist, Lisa Childers, who in my opinion is one of the up-and-coming apologists for the next generation, our very own Dr. Jerry Newcomb, Dr. Peter Lilbach, Rosaria Butterfield, who has an incredible testimony, Sean McDowell, and the list goes on. And the reason we did this project, which is both a documentary and a book, is there's a lot of people that complain about the cultural chaos. That's as the name of the series. They talk about America's breakdown, but we wanted to go below the surface and say, what are the reasons for the breakdown? What's the reasons for the chaos? Where did this all come from? Because you poll a group of people, you get hundreds and hundreds of opinions of the reason behind the chaos, the reason behind America's breakdown, and we wanted to go to the root. And we believe that there are many lies in the culture that have caused the breakdown of this nation. But we wanted to identify 10 predominant lies of our culture and in our society that has led to the chaos that we're experiencing today in the 21st century. And just picking experts and partnering with experts, like I said, all around the world that add their voice and add their expertise into understanding here are the root causes. Because if we don't identify the root causes, we're never going to be able to do anything about the chaos, never going to be able to reverse course. So we've got to get to the root. What are these lies? And also providing the church in these resources, how do we combat it? How do we push up against it? How do we fight against the lies with gospel biblical truth in order to heal our nation, to heal our society, and bring clarity to the midst of the great chaos of our day?
Also in this area, you talk a lot about lies, because the truth is challenged constantly. And so in your video there, you talk about lies, how they're destroying the culture, and I mean on all levels. It doesn't just mean about the United States and our founding. It's about what the Bible says. It's about what other people believe. You do a really good job in covering these issues in depth in these projects, and I don't think anybody, if they will listen to it, can understand the truth of what you're trying to get out about this.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that word lie is important, and it's a lie in so many ways. And we realize that who is the chief liar? Satan himself. We realize that this battle is not against flesh and blood, but it's a spiritual battle. So it's realizing the father of lies is corrupting culture, society, nations to believe this, and this is the chief lie. That if you believe, for instance, that love is love, that'll lead to flourishing, that'll lead to joy, that'll lead to true freedom. No, God is love is the truth, not love is love. Actually, love is love is not only false, it's demonic because it destroys lives. You can be spiritual but not religious, basically ignoring organized religion or ignoring biblical truth. No, just New Age spirituality and new spiritualism is destructive, and it's demonic because it's robbing people of the truth and the beauty of the gospel. And we unpack all of these lies to show the church that we not only reject these lies because they're false, but because they lead to destruction. They lead to chaos and confusion. Only biblical truth leads to flourishing and freedom. But Satan has been able to convince the world, and particularly this next generation, that a rejection of God, a rejection of Jesus Christ, a rejection of biblical truth, as it's found in His Word, somehow will lead to a free, prosperous, flourishing life, but it's the exact opposite. And it's our privilege at Coral Ridge Ministries to produce materials like this for the sake of the world, for the sake of our nation, and for the sake of this next generation.
Now, it seems that people want to put their faith in anything but God. And in this project, you talk about America is becoming dangerously divided. What could be the results of this if this doesn't stop?
Yeah, like I said earlier, you're going to have a nation that is unrecognizable. You're going to have a nation that just continues to spiral out of control. And you're going to have a nation that is purely secular. And I think the best thing that we can do is be students of history. Every nation, every empire, every kingdom, no matter how great they once were, when they went secular, those nations and empires and kingdoms were brought down. And every nation and empire that has been destroyed is mocking us right now and saying, "Do you not learn from history? What happened to the United Kingdom that was a Christian empire? What happened when they went secular in the 20th century? It's just a remnant of what it used to be, a remnant there, known as England, Scotland, and Wales and Northern Ireland. Just a remnant of what it used to be. But the list goes on and on. He raises up kingdoms and empires and nations, and he's the same God that tears them down. So we need to understand Proverbs when Solomon writes that righteousness exalts a nation, but that sin is a reproach to any people. Yes, we have experienced nearly 250 years of greatness as a nation because righteousness has been embraced in the public square. But if righteousness continues to be suppressed and the people of God continue to remain silent, God will have no choice than to bring us down and to humble our nation. That's what we can expect.
Okay, and you talked about, too, in there that there's over 330 churches in America. And again, if the church would stand up and be the church it's called to be, these things could be stopped. But also, Rob, what about normal people? They know better than what's going on, but they speak out and do nothing. Why is that?
Well, because I think they bought the lie that they're supposed to keep their religion, they're supposed to keep their faith to themselves. I think they've bought the lie that if they speak out, they're maybe going to be ostracized, they're going to be marginalized. These are all the lies that the cultural influencers and mainstream media, social media, public education, and even government officials have been promoting for decades now. But we need to remember that God always uses a remnant. God always uses his mighty men and women throughout history. And it's actually when the church has been up against these obstacles, but they chose to speak out. They chose to make a difference by being different. They chose to be salt and light, that city on a hill that Jesus refers to in Matthew 5, that it has led to incredible flourishing. Christianity is the greatest movement this world has ever seen, and we need to take our cues from history. What happened in Roman paganism in the first few centuries? Christianity was this movement that was, had a crucified, executed Messiah and leader. It was a ragamuffin group of disciples that were left behind, and they became a part of the greatest movement that the world's ever seen. Why? Because they understood that Jesus is Lord of all, and they chose to make a difference. They chose to take what they believed in private and actually proclaim it as a public truth. They believe that Jesus Christ is King and not Caesar. And we need to remember, just if you're a lay person, a mom and dad, a grandparent, you have an opportunity every day in your community, in your workplace, when you're going to vote in every election. You have a decision to make. Is Caesar Lord or is Christ Lord? That should be a question that every family in North America, Christian family, is asking. Does our family, our home, our work, the way we spend our money, the way we vote, the way we think, the way we operate, does it communicate that Christ is Lord or Caesar is Lord? I think that's an easy paradigm to focus on, particularly in this divided nation.
Yep, same thing with the prophets of Baal, isn't it?
Amen.
If God be God, then serve him. If Baal, then serve him, and we know what happened there. So
there is no neutrality. There is no middle ground. Jesus did not give us an option to stay in the middle. He just didn't. Yeah. It sometimes it seems like it would be a lot easier, but Jesus did not give us that option. He told us to pick up our cross and follow him.
Yeah, and that's what we're to do. Well, folks, stay with us, and we're going to be back with more talking here with Coral Ridge Ministries in just a moment.
Are you walking in everything God has for you? Hi, I'm Pastor Gary Culp, and I'd like to invite you to check out the Exceedingly Abundant Ministries podcast, available from the Sky High Podcast Network. This 30-minute weekly Bible study will give you time to grow spiritually and get to know God and His Word on a deeper level. God has more in store for you than you ever realized. Listen to Exceedingly Abundant Ministries today and learn about how God can do more with your life than you ever imagined.
offering words to encourage, teaching to inspire, and truth that defines real life.
This is who we are, what we offer, and what you can expect.
91.7 The Word.
You're listening to Crosspoint. Good conversation we're having today with Rod Pacienza. He's the senior pastor down at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church. He also helps head up the Coral Ridge Ministries, which was, of course, started by D. James Kennedy. Many of you know that. But they've continued that great work going on, and I do appreciate what you do there with this work. And we're talking today about a couple of DVDs that they have out entitled Cultural Chaos and Brainwashed. And folks, you can get these and play these in your church. I would suggest you get on their mailing list, and every time they got something new coming out, you may want to take a look at that, to have that and show it in your church to let you know what's going on right now. It's on the breaking edge of culture that they're trying to inform us with. But, Rob, if people want to get these or anything that you're putting out, tell people how they can do that.
Yeah, they can simply go to crm.tv, that's crm.tv, and we not only have DVDs, but we also have the ability to stream all of this content. You can rent it, purchase it, so we've made it incredibly easy to access all of our content, DVD, stream it, rent it, buy it. So, as you said, let's get this out to churches and Christian families all across North America, Christian day schools, Sunday schools. I know there's a number of churches that use this for their Sunday school curriculum, great timely content of how to approach the culture from a biblical perspective and worldview.
Now, in your DVD there, Cultural Chaos, you talked about in there that we're in a different kind of revolution, but the outcome, you say, could be more dangerous than anything else. Do you believe America is at a real crisis point, and what could happen?
Absolutely. I mean, I look at it. I look at America, and it's reminiscent of the revolutions and the onslaught of secularism in Western Europe. Just 40, 50 years ago. And now you look at the conditions, you look at the economy, you look at the public education, you look at the governments, you look at pastors getting arrested in Western Europe and the UK and just to our north in Canada. And I go, at what point will we learn from history, and at what point will we wake up and say as a church, enough is enough? We're not going to become like Western Europe. We're not going to become like Canada. That has seen just widespread chaos and confusion. It's destroyed their economy. It's destroyed morale. It's destroying their military power, and it's leading to just widespread damage to the next generation and the rise of mental illness and suicide rates. And so I really do. I believe we're at a crisis. And we better wake up, because history does repeat itself. We are not immune by any stretch of the imagination. I don't care how great America has been. We are not immune from the great empires and kingdoms and nations that were once great, but have fallen and have been destroyed. As I said earlier, the same God that rises up nations and exalts them is the same God that can tear them down and destroy them. And we're at that crisis point here in America if we don't do something about it.
Well, what I like about when you put out these projects like Cultural Chaos and Brainwashed, you always go back and tell people, how did we get here? And you show different things that's happened throughout the years, so that you know this just didn't start. I know that you talked about, the naked communist and how that's been implemented into the culture. You even talked about Meacham's book, I believe, that talked about how that, and some of this stuff's old work, but it still affects today if we don't watch it. And that's what we're seeing. But I do appreciate your people taking the time to dig and to find these resources. Where did this come from? To tell people, here's how this started. Here's what it's going to take to stop this.
It's easy to see the fruit. It's easy to see the chaos and the breakdown of what's happening in our nation. It's not always easy to see the root. How did all this happen? Did it happen last year? Did it happen 10 years ago? And often we see, no, this is generations in the making. This is 1, 2, 3, even 7 generations before, decades before, centuries before in the making. I mean, the cultural Marxism that we're seeing now obviously goes back to mid-19th century. the rise of Marxism and Darwinian evolution. This is stuff that happened a long time ago. Secular humanism coming in and corrupting and taking over our public school system. This is not something that happened in the last 20 years. This is something that happened in the last 100 years. So to your point, our ministry is always digging into the facts, showing people the roots, because you can't do anything about the fruit if you don't do something about the root. You can't do anything about the lie unless you understand where the lie came from. And that's always been the answer for the Church of Jesus Christ. Let's get to the root, cut off the root, and replace it with biblical truth and the hope of the gospel in order for there to be flourishing in our society and culture once again.
Well, just for example, when you break this down in your videos like Cultural Chaos, you do bring up the great gay and transgender situation that's going on and how they talk about how biology is irrelevant. You hear about everything else when it comes to COVID to follow the science, but yet they don't want to follow the biology of course not. Truth,
It's not convenient for them.
Right. And so everything that they're doing, this is like there's a group of people that have an agenda out here. Maybe, we do have a shadow government, so to speak, that is trying to turn this nation into something that somebody else wants, but it's a very few people. And really, when you look at that, that's more of your communist, socialist type of movement.
Absolutely. I mean, either, as I said before, either Jesus is Lord or Jesus is Lord or Caesar is Lord. And in any socialistic or Marxist government, the state is Lord. The state is God. So make no mistake about it. Anybody that comes with to Congress or to politics or to government with a secular worldview is ultimately going to be influenced predominantly by Marxist ideology. That's what gave rise to secularism in the first place, that God should be removed from the public square, that the people of faith should be removed from the public square. We're going to rewrite the history books and rewrite the great history of our nation. And so if the state is Lord, if the state is God, then all power must be consolidated with a few people. We've got to get rid of what the founders called popular sovereignty, where the power was in the people. And we've seen it in elections. We've seen it with COVID. We've seen it with the government lockdowns. Only in a secular government that is influenced by Marxism can government officials say, as they did in 2020, that liquor stores and casinos are essential businesses, but churches are not. You've got to be absolutely ignorant at best to actually look at that and not see the propaganda that's happening right before our very eyes. And this is all from the secular humanist and the Marxist ideologies that the foundation was laid 150 years ago in Western civilization for this to happen.
Yeah, and you point this stuff out in these videos, so folks, this really helps your people sitting in the pews to understand what is going on. And, with this kind of things happening, here's the results of this. What we're talking about right now, Rob won't be able to put out any more of this kind of stuff. There'll be a government regulation on what kind of a DVD their ministry is supposed to be able to put out. And I won't be able to talk to Rob about this because we won't be able to discuss these kind of issues on the open air if they get control of these medias and stuff like that. That's how serious it is. And this happens right across our border, folks. In Canada, they already regulate some of the stuff that media cannot say, Christian media. And so, Rob, this is a real serious issue.
It really is, and I'm so glad you brought that up because you hear so many Christians, including evangelical pastors, that will say, we don't talk about culture, we don't talk about politics, we just preach the gospel. And with that, I want to say, well, you're going to soon lose the right to preach the gospel if you don't wake up and actually teach your people what's happening in culture and how it flies in the face of what the Bible truly says about how a society and a nation should actually operate. So if you want to preach the gospel, I'm all about preaching the gospel. Our church was founded a ministry called Evangelism Explosion, training people all around the world how to share their faith. You're not going to find a more gospel church than ours. So I'm all about preaching the gospel, but as our founder, D. James Kennedy, said, you're going to lose the right to preach, you're going to lose the right to share your faith with your neighbor if you don't wake up to the importance of the cultural mandate and how we're to be salt and light in this world for the sake of the kingdom.
So you talk about it in there, but there seems to be less reverence. Used to say reverence for the church. Now there's less reverence for the truth. People just don't want it, and they definitely want God pushed out of the public forum. They do not want that brought in. And we don't just see this in one party, but we see it in both of our major political parties here in America. So this isn't something that's just affecting one side. It's affecting everybody, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's why, one, we need more Christians that are running for government at every level, not just at the federal level, but at the state level and the local level. As David Barton often says, we are a nation obsessed with government and politics on the federal level, and forgetting it's races for mayor and school boards and city commissions that really make a lot of difference and a lot of impact. And that's something that every Christian should look and say, how can I get involved? Can I be a precinct supervisor? Can I get involved in the election? So we need Christians to get involved, because we do see the rise of secularism, as you said, amongst all of our politicians at some level, and all of the party platforms, and that really shows a dearth of Christians that are running for office, that are engaged in the political conversation and can't encourage Christian men and women enough to get engaged and run for office.
And I know here in the video, both your videos, the basic bottom line that I catch and listen when these people are talking is destroy the family. Once they get the family unit destroyed, it's so much easier to get their school stuff through and their political agendas done and business and anything else they want to do is to dumb down that family unit, right?
Yeah, and this was always the plan of the Marxists. They understood, whether it was Karl Marx or Lenin, give me the family, destroy the family, and we can change the world. And they've done that. They were smart. Satan knows the truth. He's the father of lies, and the reason he's the father of lies is because he knows the truth, and we've seen demonic and satanic ideologies all throughout history, and Marxism and Leninism decided to attack the family, and they've been incredibly successful because they understood that the family is the bedrock of a Judeo-Christian nation, the bedrock of a capitalistic nation, and ultimately a free nation. So get the family, consolidate all the power to the state becomes God, attack the churches, close them down, silence them, cancel them, shame them, and you have revolution. And in their minds, that's ultimate victory. And we need to understand the role of the family and how the family is being attacked at every level. And that's one of the things that we're exposing in both Brainwashed and Cultural Chaos, that so much of the attacks is at the nuclear family in this nation.
By the way, folks, when they do talk on these, they always do give you answers of how to combat this stuff. So can you tell our people here today before you leave, what do they need to be doing to combat what's going on out there? What can they do as Christians, as citizens of America?
Well, I think we need to first understand that we are to be informed, but then there's a call to action. The people of God have always been a church that's been moved and motivated by the power of the gospel to make a difference by being different. So we got to speak up. We got to be present. We've got to understand, how is Jesus Christ declared King in the public square and in every earthly realm. We need to understand the importance of raising up the next generation with a biblical worldview, that we're going to tell the cultural elites, we're going to tell government officials, we're going to tell the public education school system, we're going to say, no, you're not going to take our children. You're not going to corrupt them. You're not going to have their minds. But it means parents, we've got to be equipped. We got to have the tools. We've got to become the chief disciplers of our home. And there's so many ministries, ours included, that you can come to. We want to be a resource for you and for the church to be equipped and to have the tools. And then I'd say, just lastly, we need to not give up hope. We are a prevailing church. Jesus said in Matthew 16, I build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail. So we need to operate with a sense of optimism. We need to operate with gospel hope. and realize the reason we stand for truth is not just for truth's sake, but we realize that the truth of the Bible, the truth of the gospel, is the answer for the brokenness, for the despair that this world and this nation is facing. The church has always been called the hope of the world, and we have the greatest message the world's ever heard. Let's go out there and make God's truth a public truth, because it's true, good, and beautiful.
All right, again, tell people how they can find out more about Brainwashed or Cultural Chaos, any of the work you do there at Coral Ridge Ministries.
Simply go to crm.tv, crm.tv. You can download, you can purchase books, documentaries, resources for you to be equipped, thoroughly equipped, for the cultural chaos of our day.
All right. Well, Rob, thanks for taking time to be with us today here on Crosspoint. We really do appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great interview today. Folks, very important interview today. People need to get these resources, folks. You know, all that information comes from the book I have in my other hand here, the Bible. The Bible's the one that will tell us the way we should be going in life. It's God's Word. It contains every directive we need to get through this life, because its instructions were made for us to live by. God has a plan for us, folks, and God's Word is never outdated. It accurately will tell you how to go through everyday life. It contains the most important words you're ever going to read and certainly ever follow, and help us to understand when we watch these documentaries that these ministries are putting out, to understand them better, because we understand what God's Word says. Be sure and join us again next time as we again discuss issues that are affecting the church. Have a great week. Allow God to use you for His purposes so that greater things can be done. Make your life count in God's plans for eternity. I'm Mark Taylor.
Crosspoint is a program produced in Studio 101 at KNEO Radio. Not all of the views on Crosspoint reflect those of the management or staff of KNEO. You may contact the Crosspoint program at 10827 Highway 86 East, Neosho, Missouri 64850, or by email crosspoint@kneo.org. You can hear Crosspoint 4 times a week: Saturday morning at 1, Saturday afternoon at 2, Saturday evening at 9, and Sunday evening at 7. You can also listen anytime online at kneo.org.
Harper's Kennel of Stella, Missouri is proud to be sponsoring this portion of broadcasting on KNEO. Owned by Judy and Danny Harper, Harper's Kennel of Stella, Missouri specializes in French Bulldogs. For more information, the phone number is 417-628-3083. Are you a Christian who likes to read? If not, there's a whole world of Christian publishing out there that you're missing out on. I invite you to check out the Author's Corner podcast, where I talk to the latest Christian authors each week about their new book releases and what's coming next. So if you're ready to jumpstart your spiritual growth with the newest books and the authors who write them, check out the Author's Corner podcast with me, Roberta Foster.